What's up, guys? We got some interesting, exciting news today, and we actually kind of did yesterday as well, so I'm gonna go through both of them. But yesterday they announced the rebalance of Fortus and Angar, and then today they announced the rebalance of Blessings. And I want to talk a little bit about both of them and some issues overall in the game with the balance and why there has been so little balance updates. I think the last time that we got champion rebalance was like literally last summer. And a couple years ago they used to do a lot of more champion rebalances and pretty major ones, like let's say Candy or Mountain King for instance. And I can't directly show the messages that they have said, but I can talk about what is discussed in the CC chat. And cutting it to the chase, they have literally said that the reason why they have been lately so hesitant to do any champion rebalances, even though the game desperately does need it, is because when they nerfed Urogrim, which you might remember, I think that's like, is that like a year ago or 1.5 years ago? I think it was either last summer or the summer before it. I almost can't even remember. I think it's maybe like 1.5 years ago. But wait, isn't Urogrim Ogre? I don't even remember anymore what faction. Oh, he's epic, of course. Yeah, so Urogrim is like an epic poisoner champion. And when he was released, I think that was just right after the 25 dungeons were released. And basically he was like a better version of Bad El Khazar. He was healing the team a lot and he was doing massive damage. And he was able to basically solo many of the new stages and kind of trivialize the content. And he got nerfed, I think maybe a couple months or fairly fast after his release. And there was a massive backlash in the game, like on all of social medias like Reddit and so on. People were very negative about it because it helped a lot of people to like progress in the game and get a lot further than they were otherwise. And Plarium has literally stated multiple times that what happened with Urogrim is the reason that they have been hesitant to specifically nerf champions. And it might not be a popular thing to say, but I literally said it back then. I even made like a sarcastic Reddit thread to troll about it, which went very big. This was like long before I was a content creator. But the Urogrim nerf was totally fair, and he was OP. He basically did the same thing as Bad El Khazar, but way better, and you were very easily able to solo some content. Now, I think dungeons should be fairly easy and so on, but he was clearly overpowered in comparison to the like existing champions and the game balance. And he also wasn't a PvP champion, so I didn't care too much about it either way. And like soloing dungeons with epic is nice, but it wasn't really a big deal to me back then either. But because the community backlash was so huge, people were like rioting about it for like 6 months or whatever. That's why they are so afraid to do new game balance updates, or specifically nerfs. And I don't want to, often content creators tell people to boycott and this kind of stuff. I'm not saying to boycott, but I think learning from that, which they have like clearly stated multiple times, maybe if players were a bit more vocal that we do need nerfs, then maybe we could get something changed in the game. Because even though it might seem like they never listen to the players, but literally the example they gave us why they don't want to nerf more things is because the community backlash was so huge. So maybe if we had more people complaining about Ukraine Duo and maybe complaining about other stuff as well, like let's say lockout or whatever, maybe they would actually change things. So maybe you guys should be a bit more vocal and post those Reddit threads. I often feel like Reddit is way too like early game and PvE focused. I guess it kind of makes sense, but would be cool to see more PvP related Reddit threads. But yeah, that's basically the Fortus and Angar buffs. I don't want to get into them too much. I will say that Angar, for instance, is an old champion. He actually was one of the best PvP champions in the first year of the game. Him and Roshkar the Tower were like the best things, because if you build them fast, you pretty much won the fight at that point. I think Arbiter missions didn't even exist then, unless I recall wrong. But yeah, he does some like taunts and that's about it. He's an HP scaling champion, but he doesn't have like 50% damage reduction, and he doesn't fear the enemy team at the start. So what they did to Angar is that they made his debuff slightly more consistent, but that really isn't relevant. Angar is too outdated. First of all, they should have given him a taunt and not provoke, but even if he had taunt, that wouldn't be enough to make him relevant in PvP. Like, you would have to nerf Taras and Marichka first. Like, no amount of slight buffing is gonna make the difference to make all champions like Angar relevant. And it's the same with Fortus. He only got damage increase, and no matter what amount it is, it's not big deal. So I kind of scoffed at these updates or rebalances, and so did other CCs as well, as you can see. But then here is what we got today, and this is a lot more interesting. There has been a lot of complaints about polymorph, and I might take a little bit controversial opinion here, but I have had this exact same opinion since the release of Blessings, and I have many times debated about this with other people. But I think a lot of people kind of forget the old times or didn't play in the old times. But before polymorph, Arena was just people going first with Ramantu and one-shotting the enemy team in 5 seconds. And back then, like, because the damage was so high, even the defense teams, like, nobody had a nuker in defense team. Everybody had like a lockout, and either fast lockout or fast Siffy and lockout, but it was basically just full stall. If you were faster than the enemy team, then they couldn't win, and if you were faster than the enemy team, then the fight lasted like 5 seconds. Of course, there's a bit more nuance to that, but I don't think like there needs to be some strong counters against like buff strippers, especially after the release of Ramantu, who only does not buff strip the team, but also puts block passives debuff on you, so that stuff like damage reducing passives and so on will not affect it. I don't think that was like the old speed meta. I don't think too fondly about it. Maybe it was better than the current meta, but I'm not sure if it was, but it's pretty much tied to it. I think the best state of the game for PvP was after we got the blessings before Taras and Marichka. I mean, I have said this many times. After that, you couldn't just willy-nilly use Ramantu or Service in every offense team and do fast fights, and people kind of had to come up with actual strategies, and we saw a lot of weird teams. Of course, people used a lot of ignore defense like Baron and champions like Cupidus that just autoed the enemy team down. Kind of like Taras and Marichka, to be fair, but a little bit different. And then people were even doing weird stuff like using Basileus or Shamael, and even I was using Gala, which people kind of might not even remember anymore. But at that time, when you couldn't blindly rely on the debuffs, people did do a lot of weird teams, and there was a lot of viable both offense and defense teams until Ukraine Duo was released, and now nothing else is viable. But that's my 2 cents on that, and I might make another video about it because we already had a small debate in CC chat about polymorph and accuracy versus resistance and so on. I think I'll probably make another separate video about that. But let's get into the actual update or the info that we have today, or the second part of it, and that is the rework on the blessings. Let me quickly read what they said, but I'm gonna cut to the chase and tell you that the polymorph nerf isn't that big. It is the second polymorph nerf that we got, but it isn't that big, and several CCs were already disappointed. Polymorph rebalance. PvP meta has tremendously impacted with the release of Sheep, rendering debuff champions like Ramantu less effective and enabling tanky teams on the arena, which in turn increased the average battle time and pushed the players towards outliving the opponent. We have been monitoring the polymorph's performance since it launched in the game and gradually implemented various small changes, with the end goal of eventually bringing Sheep to the point where it still is an impactful and competitive blessing, but at the same time it becomes less frustrating and more predictable. We anticipate that this most recent polymorph change will shift the PvP meta towards faster and dynamic battles, and debuffs become more relevant. Okay, I'm not gonna read all of this, but then it also says here that they normalized the stats on blessings, that they all give the exact same stat values, but they didn't tell us yet what stats they give, and they said that that information will be released in several days and not right away. Okay, so a quick little update. I mentioned that Plarium said that all of the blessings will give the exact same stats, but they're not gonna tell what stats they give until a few days later. But now, because every CC asked about it, they changed their mind, so let me do a quick update about this, because this is actually gonna be fairly interesting. Folks, I can see the last part of the announcement caused a lot of confusion, so let's not wait till next update and clarify it now. Now every blessing will grant bonus to all of the stats basically that they give currently. The values remain the same, and the implications of this I don't think are gonna be earth-shattering, but of course for me this screams that the main reason why they did this, first of all, is that you can use any blessing on any type of champion, but also this is gonna give a lot of stats for every champion, which is gonna make 6-star blessings a lot better for PvE, so maybe they can sell a lot more soulstone packs because of this. But then I think there's another maybe unintended consequence for PvP, is that some champions maybe only care about speed and not other stats, but then there are champions that care about multiple stats, like let's say a Nuke Wukong. Of course you want to get the damage stats and speed, but you're also gonna benefit from accuracy, so those type of champions that require multiple different stats, they get a little bit more out of this update. Or for instance, let's say somebody like Crixia, she scales speed and accuracy from her resistance, but of course she wants to get all of them and also tank stats, so this is for instance a pretty massive indirect buff to Crixia. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to add this video so that I don't give bad information to people. And multiple other blessings were also reworked other than polymorph, but let's start with the polymorph because I think that's the most interesting part to many people. Instead of me reading this entire paragraph with my scuffed English, if I cut to the chase, the only difference here is that occurs once per enemy turn. So that means that I guess you can't polymorph multiple champions in the enemy team at the same time. But the thing is that the big part about polymorph isn't actually the sheep debuff. That's not the big issue. I mean, it is good to CC the enemy so they can't do anything for potentially 2 turns. But the big reason why polymorph is so big deal in arena is because it interrupts enemy skills. And how it works is that, let's say that you use an AoE skill, like Madame Seris buff strip. It doesn't actually buff strip everybody in the enemy team at the same time. Actually, let me quickly find Madame Seris and give a quick explanation about it. And this same thing isn't just for damage, but it's for, or like, it's not just for debuffs, but for all AoE skills in the game, damage or not. But when Madame Seris does the buff strip, first of all, it does all these 3 effects in turns. The buff strip, then the decrease attack, and then the decrease defense. And how it actually goes is that in the enemy team order, like what champion they have aura, what is the second champion, and so on. You go 1 by 1 first with buff strip on everybody, then you go 1 by 1 with decrease attack, and then finally on decrease defense. And polymorph can proc in all 3 of those effects, and they can have multiple champions with polymorph. And let's say that the buff strip part on the first champion in the enemy team, if that procs polymorph, then that means that Madame Seris gets polymorphed and none of the effects after that are applied. So nobody in that team gets anything. And it could proc on the second champion, and that means that the champions after that don't get debuffed. Or it could proc on the second part, like the decrease attack or the decrease defense part. The point being is that it completely interrupts the skill. And the main deal isn't really that, let's say that your Duchess doesn't get buff stripped. Of course that's good, but if Duchess actually procs polymorph, then nobody in the team is getting buff stripped, and that's what makes polymorph so strong, and why it's so strong against Ramandu and Seris, that they don't really get a lot use in classic arena anymore. And basically this update is not really gonna change that at all. Sure, you're gonna proc less polymorph on the enemy team, but the fact that you have potential to interrupt the Ramandu on the first turn, which basically ruins like that team comp, it's still gonna deter people from using those tactics. You can use them, but it's like gambling that you roll the dice and you might win very fast or you might lose. And that may be viable tactic too. I'm not even saying that that is not an option, because people definitely do that. And I think it's fine. I think you could do polymorph in other ways. There could be other ways to counter buff strippers, but I do think polymorph or something like that is needed to counter debuffs and buff strip. Otherwise, we will go back to speed meta and it will be just like the current meta, just in a different way. Though I would say that we kind of need something like this against lockout as well. Maybe it doesn't have to be as strong counter, but there needs to be some way to counter lockout. And that used to be something that I was speaking out for forever, but after Taras and Marichka, I'm only talking about them until they get balanced, and I'm not even focusing those other issues in the game balance or the PvP balance. But then there's a bunch of other blessings that got buffs, like for instance this poison one. Basically the damage of the poisons got doubled, and you could definitely run like double Kalvalax and any like Xavia or any of those poison proc champions. That actually works. You can do double Kalvalax and Xavia. Those can be 5-second fights as well. But the issue of course is that we have Marichka passive that puts block damage in the team and all other shenanigans. So I don't think poisons are ever gonna be viable in PvP. And let me look at these others. I did read them before, but I don't think any of these other blessings are super interesting for PvP. Yeah, this one Iron Will used to be used against Cupidus, but I don't think there's really anything in the current meta where it's super good against. Maybe like Taras A2, but it's not really relevant enough to like use them, and basically none of these other ones are relevant for PvP. Wait, what? No, debuffs was... This I didn't know. This Heaven Cast was changed completely. This blessing used to be a meme. Debuffs placed by these champions default skill, so only A1, will ignore a percentage of the target's resistance. Now it is increases the damage inflicted by this champion according to the number of buffs on them, doesn't increase the damage from poison, burn or bombs. 2% damage per each buff. That's kind of interesting. I guess this mastery will be viable now. I'll have to crunch the numbers on it and consult the mathematicians about it, but I guess Heavencast will be more interesting. This one used to be kind of meme. I actually looked this up before the video, but I guess I missed that one. Yeah, Reflect, I don't think that's interesting for PvP. Maybe it could be interesting for Hydra, I'm not quite sure, but definitely not for PvP. Heals this champion whenever a shield buff placed on them expires, is removed or is broken by enemy attack, so kind of like the Rockcool shield. The value of the heal is equal to portion of this champion's max HP. 15%. This would be kind of funny to use with when you pair it with Necret, but since it's for that champion and not champions that it is shielding, I don't know how interesting the emergency heal is gonna be, but it's kind of interesting. Maybe you can do something with this and Necret, so I definitely do like that they're doing some completely new approach on some of these blessings. Increases the damage inflicted by this champion according to the number of dead allies on their team, doesn't increase the damage from poison, burn or bombs, and up to 5% for each ally. There has been some strategies in the past where you have like level 1 champion on your team, and the point of it is that the enemy is of course gonna focus it on AI because it's the lowest HP, and when it dies it procs turn meter boost from like masteries or whatever. But maybe there's something like that you could do with Dark Wrestle. I guess I have to think about it later, but it doesn't really straight up sound like something that is gonna be game changing, but it definitely sounds interesting, and maybe there will be new champions in the game at some point that kill themselves or something that is part of their mechanics. Maybe this will open the room for those. I will have to think about that. Yeah, I think that's about it for the interesting blessings. I think the main point for this video for me was really to talk about the game balance overall, not just the current balancing things that we got on Cortus and Angar and these blessings. Though I will say that I'm extremely happy that we finally see some game balance updates. I have been waiting for these so much, and believe me, I have been asking for game balance updates on CC chat like trillion times. Like, ask any CC how many times I have complained about Taras or Marichka and many other things. And it's definitely nice if Plarium is actually shifting their focus and starting to think about game balance. I wasn't really expecting that after yesterday's Portus and Angar update, we're actually getting more balance updates. Now the biggest deal is that we don't really know the stats that the blessings are gonna give, but they said that the stats are standardized and all of the blessings are gonna give same stats. I don't know what that means, like can you choose from like nuke stats or accuracy/resistance or HP? How does that work? Nobody knows, and they said that they are not gonna tell us in, like they're gonna tell us in a couple of days, so it is what it is. And yeah, like you guys tell me what you think about the update, and did you get so many good ideas how to maybe use the Dark Resolve or Heaven Cast Blessings or any of the other ones? These definitely seem interesting and give options. I guess kind of both Heaven Cast and Emergency Heal. Both of them kind of scream Necret to me because he does shields and like repeatedly puts them back and does a lot of buffs on one champion. But I don't know if these are potent enough to make them interesting. Maybe they are. And yeah, I will definitely keep pushing for like buffs and champion rebalances. They don't want to use the nerf word, so maybe I should avoid using it a bit as well, but yeah. And yeah, if you guys feel any way about something, I guess the lesson I have learned, and I don't know if they like me saying this, but the lesson we have learned from the Urogrim and what they have said, that that's why they don't want to nerf things, because Urogrim backlash was so huge that if people are actually very vocal about things, it's not like they don't notice. So maybe if there was a huge backlash about them not balancing the game, they would do something about it. I don't know if I don't think there is going to be one, but it may be possible. Anyway, that's it for this video. I think it was already way too long and I don't want to repeat myself too much, so that's it for this video and see ya.